Greetings, Femiborg! Greetings, Femiborg. It is I, Cressida Fustian, handmaiden of the beauteous uterus, vigilante, and the clitoris of bitterness herself. And it is time for feminist cultural criticism. This week, we look at Moulade by the Senegalese father of African cinema himself, Ousmane Sambene, who is also Mr. June of the Red Hot Muslim Feminist calendar. Look, he has his shirt unbuttoned. In Moulade, Ousmane tackles the brutal atrocity of female genital mutilation from an original angle. The wider ethics of the village that allows it to happen. Because, you know, it takes a village to mutilate a child. It's all connected. First, censorship. The public whipping of Colorado for resisting genital mutilation and the lynching of outsider mercenaire for speaking out.
Mercenary. Jena muso be nyona wala saka sega fele soro kalifa kula ebi wuli ki teke soma. Ni nyona maba
adun tubi faka ne gola kamiye do. Etaku. Et le vanta muso n'entend de muso tien.
Mercenaire fana sare nona koyi.
Comment?
Mercenaire kwani?
Mercenaire.
Hali dorme maya kwa ka warbe tununa.
Oui kuna.
If women are to be controlled. Second, erosion of personal autonomy. The heroine, Colorado, counters the authoritarian tradition of male dominance by an even older tradition.
Ay na yan. Aw nyeme ni juru ina. Ma shi manga ni juru insabu. Kasoro ma ya Maria. Ne fene tse ka ushige nga bodu ingono. Kasoro ma sudaula. Nga. Maoma. Ni ye sariya inche. Kalifanyama bo tigi faka. Aya mewa.
This protection spirit defends the right of the individual to resist the collective. Even in this remote West African village, there is libertarian tradition and authoritarian tradition, and we must choose which one we feed. access to information. The men of the village must seize their women's radios to rob them of the information and cultural context that they need to challenge the all-male village council.
Nyanu fola bara nyuma lula kalulali hangili nyumala.
Musomanuga bolokoli a wajubelen tɛ alikuranɛ kɔnɔ. Ne yɛrɛ de tulo y'a mɛn rajo la alimami ba da. Wa san o san silamɛmuso caman de bɛ ɲɔgɔn sɔrɔ baga ka iji kɛ ɲɔgɔn fɛ. Siya caman b'u la. Olu bɛɛ ma boloko dɛ.
Astaghfirullah. Kole ado. Eyi shitana yi.
Well, now just you transfer yourself to Somalia last week. Girl of 13, probably out for the first time unsupervised in her life. Things must have been very bad if she was allowed out without male supervision to begin with, but there's enough chaos to explain that. She's immediately pounced upon by a group of older men and very thoroughly raped and sodomized and beaten. And she goes to the religious court for redress, and the religious court knows its business, and it knows its texts very well. And it says, we don't know that it's true that what you say, that men abused you in this manner, but we can tell you've had sex. In fact, judging by your injuries, we can tell you've had a great deal of sex lately. But you're not married. So you're guilty of adultery. So now, before your wounds have stopped hurting, you're going to be buried up to your waist in hot sand, and laughing men will now take part in the only other cultural activity that gratifies the male sex in that part of the world, which is stoning a young woman to death. The people who did this knew exactly what they were doing, and they were in perfect conformity with their holy books, and they absolutely do not believe that anything happens randomly. They are not under the illusion that heaven is indifferent. They're not under the illusion that we are biologically created, that we're here because of the laws of natural selection and random mutation. They don't believe anything of the sort. They're utterly consoled by the idea that heaven intervenes and cares about every action. Otherwise, they wouldn't put themselves to the trouble of raping, torturing, and murdering a 13-year-old whose last moments you might want to take just a few seconds to imagine.
So before we get all smug about the Muslims, Hitch, let's all remind ourselves what patriarchy was like under rational, scientific Western Enlightenment.
Demosoni masoro ayabila karana ayala furuke kundunya nabo usebeni mosola bolokoli masebenya nyama usebeni demosola bolokoli masebe.
So yes, after women got the vote, civilized Western men gave up on surgically removing their clitorises, imprisoning feminist sex educators for obscenity, and branding women mentally ill for having orgasms. Instead, they eroded personal autonomy by taking over the feminist theory of free love and distorting it. Trying to reimagine it as a kind of pressured sexual availability, freely available, not free to say yes or no.
In the wake of 1968, the era of active politics had begun. Petitions and protests were the engine of this activity. there were hundreds and hundreds of petitions signed and distributed in the coming decade. These petitions attacked the moralistic and ossified establishment on all fronts, one of which was of course sexual. Muriel Salmona, a psychiatrist and president of the Traumatic Memory and Victimology Association, has said that after 1968, attitudes towards paedophilia began to shift among the intellectual elite. Children were viewed as having the right to be considered sexual beings. In Salmona's words, paedophilia was considered a sexual orientation. It was all part of a vision of freedom.
Creepy, smelly, hairy hippies telling girls that they are uptight and square if they don't want to be part of the orgy.
The controversy usually concentrates on a petition that was published in France's foremost paper, Le Monde, in 1977, which argued the rights of 12 and 13-year-olds to have relations with whomever they choose. The petition was signed by many prominent names: Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida, Roland Barthes, Gilles Deleuze, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Simone de Beauvoir, as well as a number of future French ministers.
And the right and the left both, whether it's Phyllis Schlafly who's lecturing on how if you had been virtuous you wouldn't have been sexually harassed, or the left that's explaining to you that you should celebrate your sexuality and forget about rape. Okay, forget about it, don't have a bad attitude, don't feel like a victim. They both want women to accept the status quo, to live in the status quo, and not to organize the political resistance.
Hey, تعال مفيد.
Just because we're shrill and aggressive doesn't make us wrong, you know. Do you think I like walking around with a face like this? I'd really rather be grilling.
زن زندگی آزادی 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 نترسید ما همه با هم هستیم 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 بترسید ما همه با هم هستیم پیش روی ماست آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی آزادی آزادی.
Welcome back. Free speech, personal autonomy, access to information, the only cure for the systemic oppression of the vagina, as I was explaining online when I received the following mail from Remove Kebabistan 88 Kick. Cressida Fustian, you are an ugly lesbian apologist for jihadi Muslim monsters who will take over weak, you spelled weak wrong, decadent Western civilization. Remove kebab, kek. Take that political correctness. But also, I just became a Muslim, but also that is just because you would not sleep with me. Me personally or all women everywhere. So the downfall of Western civilization is your fault, really. Islam is the last true religion because their women know their place, not like Western woman feminist abortion sluts, #jihad, #patriarchy rules, #I'm still libertarian somehow. Au contraire, remove Kebabistan 88 kek. Behold, my top 5 Islamic proofs that liberal Muslims are right. Number 1. No compulsion in religion. The teachings of the Quran are marked by deep contradiction between the early individualist ethics taught at Mecca and the later authoritarian ethics taught at Medina, when Muhammad was lawgiver and military commander. A contradiction so deep that even Ayaan Hirsi Ali has to admit the original Mecca ethics are pretty cool.
So if you take the Prophet Muhammad, you see that in the beginning when he was in Mecca, he was preaching. And what he was preaching is what we would define as religion now. When he goes to Medina, he starts to do other things. He starts to wage wars, he legislates, he is judge, jury, general, all at the same time. Now, the people who are Muslim, 1/5 of humanity, who emphasize, when they invoke the Prophet Muhammad, if they emphasize the Mecca period, I label them the Mecca Muslims. The others who invoke Muhammad and emphasize the Medina period and actively set out to Islamize the world through da'wah or mission work or jihad or a combination, I label them the Medina Muslims in that book.
So there's 3 possible explanations for this shift from libertarian Mecca to authoritarian Medina. Theory 1. Muhammad was a creepy cult leader like Jim Jones. Jim Jones taught socially progressive liberation type ideals in the beginning to get people hooked before getting more and more controlling and drunk on power until he isolated them in the Jonestown compound and went totally batshit insane on the tyranny.
They're ordered to kill the unbeliever in specific terms. In the Hadith, not the Quran, but in the sayings of the Prophet, which have the same theological and moral weight in the teaching, it is said that anyone who tries to change their religion from Islam, to apostatize, must be killed. They can't do it. They should. It's a divine mandate, but they don't.
This theory of creepy cult leader Muhammad is popular with Christopher Hitchens, but also with ISIS, Boko Haram, Hamas, and many other creepy cults of Muslims.
We have a power and responsibility to save lives, but it means changing the way we talk in the aftermath of an attack. You see, I'm a cognitive scientist, and I've spent the last 7 years interviewing radicalized people, members and supporters of groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. When they felt excluded, the list of things they're willing to fight and die for got longer. People can be turned away from violence if they believe their wider social group disapproves.
Not a proper Jew, the wrong sort of Jew, self-hating Jew. I was called that for the first time when I was 19 years old at university, where I made a speech in defense of a pro-Palestinian motion. And it was in the Jewish Telegraph. And they front-paged it, this self-hating Jew. She must hate herself when she looks in the mirror. I was 19 years old. I've had people phone me up and say, we're going to put you in a wheelchair. We know where you are. We're outside your door. Probably the worst incident was when I was with my sister at a meeting about anti-Semitism with all Jews on the panel. And people were shouting at us, capos, capos.
You're called traitor Jews, capos.
Capo was a Jewish inmate of a concentration camp who collaborated with the authorities. We're talking people who collaborated in annihilation of their own people. So it's a pretty bad thing to be called, and it's Jews calling other Jews. One of the biggest problems we face is the treatment of our community as if it was just one monolithic block. This is the typical trope of all forms of racism. The Jewish community is not one undifferentiated thing. Its opinions vary, just like every other section of the community.
Theory 2. Muhammad is an imperialist conqueror, like Napoleon. Between 1799 and 1804, Napoleon worked democratically with various legislative assemblies before gaining the power to declare himself emperor and ditching all that democracy stuff. The Napoleonic Code's guarantees of equality before the law revolutionized feudal Europe, just as Muhammad's Sharia law did in the 7th century Middle East, allowing rapid acceptance of both systems as superior by conquered nations. So, a lot of powerful Muslim conquerors have favored this powerful conquering vision of Islam.
Allah has sent me a vision. He has commanded me to take Constantinople. I have no choice but to obey his wish. I just woke from a dream. I saw my father, my ancestors, Osman. They showed me the road ahead. It led me to Constantinople. The gates of the city flew open. I walked straight to Hagia Sophia, and there I saw the red apple itself. It was given to me.
I want the candles firing day and night until the Romans come crawling out, begging for mercy.
The wars won't last until sundown if this continues.
A new age is coming! Allah will be with every one of us! And it begins tonight! And we will take the city! Allahu Akbar! Take over!
Thank you for all your lessons, teacher. They will be remembered.
إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمته عليك.
Also, this is how Crusaders saw Islam.
You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember, and we are fighting. Our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza and in all other regions in Israel are joining this chain of Jewish heroes, a chain that has started 3,000 years ago from Joshua ben Nun until the heroes of 1948, the Six-Day War, the 73 October War, and all other wars in this country. Our hero troops, they have one supreme main goal: to completely defeat the murderous enemy and to guarantee our existence in this country. We've always said, never again. Never again is now.
Palestinian Sabrim Abu Daqqa weeps as she looks at a photo of her daughter, who died during an Israeli airstrike on Gaza on Sunday, the Gaza Strip's deadliest day in 15 years. Abu Dhaka lost 3 children that day, another 2 were wounded, and the fate of her 6th child was unclear on Sunday. I was at home and suddenly we heard a sound and everything fell over our heads, she says. Abu Dhaka learned her children's fate while in the hospital. She said she was pulled out from under the rubble of her home in Khan Yunis, Gaza, and called for her children's names, but heard no response. It took civil defense workers 3 hours to remove her from the rubble, she adds. Abu Dhaka and residents of 3 other homes destroyed in airstrikes said they received no forewarning from Israel, adding that this strike was different from previous rounds when Israeli security forces had called residents to evacuate in advance of an attack.
Русский мир расколол русскую православную церковь. Вторжение российских войск в Украину поставило РПЦ и патриарха Кирилла перед простым христианским выбором – осудить войну или поддержать агрессора. Выбор сделан. 6-я заповедь «Не убий» не для РПЦ. Московский патриарх не просто благословил войну против Украины, он также благословил убийство паствы, которую считает своей. При этом Кирилл ни словом, ни духом не обмолвился о массированных обстрелах и гибели мирных жителей по всей Украине, включая русскоязычных и по большей части православных.
Azadi, 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 Azadi. Zan zindagi azadi, 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 zan zindagi azadi. زندگی آزادی نترسید ما همه با هم هستیم 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 بترسید ما همه با هم هستیم پیش روی ماست آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی پیش روی ماست آزادی
Our hero troops, they have one supreme main goal: to completely defeat the murderous enemy and to guarantee our existence in this country. We've always said, never again is now.
Well, why do you think that is? I mean, why is that? I mean, is it just because people are lazy today, or they're bored? I mean, are we just like bored, spoiled children who've just been lying in the bathtub all day, just playing with their plastic duck, and now they're just thinking, well, what can I do?
Don't shake that, trying to please me. You never let me down before. I don't imagine you're too familiar, and I don't see you anymore.
It's time for your oral.
In Judaism, this tradition of speaking truth to power is iconically represented by Abraham, father of the Jewish people, challenging God himself to spare Sodom from genocide.
Azadi, 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 Azadi. Zan zindagi azadi, zan zindagi azadi, zan zindagi azadi, zan zindagi azadi.
I do not ever think that Israel should be blown into the sea
or that everybody should be killed. That's no solution. That doesn't make it any better. But I would like to see a change of attitude towards Palestinians. My commitment to Palestine is not a political commitment, it's a human commitment. And it came about because I saw for myself the deprivation and misery that my people, the Jews, were putting the Palestinians through. And they regard me as someone who is betraying my people. I'm betraying my Jewishness. Whereas I think, you see, that they are. Because I've always felt that the Jewish spirit and the Jewish tradition was one of compassion and kindness and decency to strangers.
Theory 3. Muhammad was taking emergency siege measures like Winston Churchill. According to Islamic history, Muslims were persecuted by the infidels and driven as outcasts to Medina, where Muhammad had to accept the position of lawgiver to protect his people. So, could he have been a democratic-spirited leader fighting a defensive war? Since his tactics do seem like medieval versions of tactics used by democratic leaders fighting defensive wars. In the Second World War, democratic Britain founded a Ministry of Information to issue and censor war news, while wartime Ukrainian democracy recently merged all television channels into an official telemarathon news service.
Не було, будь ласка, моїх портретів, бо президент не ікона, не ідол. Президент – це не портрет. Повісьте туди фотографії своїх дітей. І перед кожним рішенням дивіться їм в очі. Про людей з нетрадиційною орієнтацією не хочу вам нічого поганого зараз говорити, тому що ми живемо з вами в відкритому, вільному суспільстві, де кожен обирає мову, якою спілкується, національність і свою орієнтацію. Залиште ви вже цих людей в спокій, Господи.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки.
I wish you health, fellow Ukrainians. It was a rough day. At night, there was a Russian missile attack on Sevidovo, Donetsk region, right at residential buildings. 4 missiles. There are dead. There are probably people under the rubble. The rubble is being cleared all day. All the wounded were provided with the necessary assistance. More than 20 houses were destroyed. Another Russian strike hit Zaporizhia region, also with missiles. Among the dead are rescuers. They arrived at the scene after the first hit and started helping. And then there was a second strike. My condolences to all those whose relatives and friends were killed by Russian terror. I also held several meetings today. I would like to mention a meeting with representatives of the law enforcement sector, including the head of the Security Service of Ukraine. He reported on counteracting collaborators and protecting Ukrainians from those who deliberately incite hatred within our country. I also had a meeting with the Ministry of Defense and other government officials. All the key issues boil down to ensuring the protection of people, Ukraine's ability to conduct offensive operations, and our ability to strengthen Ukraine, to overcome the accumulated problems. Everyone in Ukraine must remember, especially those who have stopped noticing the war because they are fully focused on politics. Russia is still capable of doing evil. No one will be able to turn a blind eye. We have to fight. We must keep our defense as a top priority, and we must take our state stronger every day. Glory to all those who care about Ukraine and Ukrainians. Glory to Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine.
The contrast between the Quran's peacetime instructions to tolerate offensive speech and the condemnation of rumor mongers who deserve to die after the siege of Medina could thus plausibly be read as a temporary wartime censorship. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed groundbreaking anti-racist orders, like Executive Order 8802. Yet, when he considered the Japanese Americans to be an internal security threat, he allowed them to be racially profiled and rounded up for internment camps. Executive Order 9066. Now, I'm not saying that was right, you understand. Sorry, George. I'm saying it was an emergency wartime measure taken by a president otherwise known for anti-racism and never presented as the American ideal. Therefore, when you have verses in the Quran saying that Jews are people of the book and will receive Allah's reward if they are upright, but the Medina Jews were racially profiled, expelled, held captive, or executed when accused of aiding the infidels in the war, should that be understood as an emergency measure like FDR's or an ideal of Islam?
So if you take the Prophet Muhammad, you see that in the beginning when he was in Mecca, he was preaching. And what he was preaching is what we would define as religion now. When he goes to Medina, he starts to do other things.
It must be remembered that the crime of these men was high treason against the state during a time of siege. And those who have read how Wellington's march could be traced by the bodies of deserters and pillagers hanging from the trees need not be surprised at the summary execution of a traitorous clan. Syed Amir Ali, the spirit of Islam.
So they don't do it. They should do it. They're ordered to do it, but they don't. They're ordered to kill the unbeliever in specific terms. In the Hadith, not the Quran, in the sayings of the Prophet, which have the same theological and moral weight of the teaching, it is said that anyone who tries to change their religion from Islam, to apostatize, must be killed. They can't do it. They should. It's a divine mandate, but they don't. Because the innate morality that belongs to all of us, fortunately, comes to save us from the wickedness that comes from the texts.
To explain more about this looming threat, former prosecutor Shelby joins us right now.
Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Shelby. Now, you have been telling your viewers that al-Qaeda actually has more than 5 million decoy Muslims in our country to soften us up for their next attack.
Yes, an attack they will if we don't do something. Listen, these friendly decoy Muslims are virtually everywhere, walking among us, making people think, hey, Muslims, they're just like you and me. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason. It wouldn't be fair for the police to stop and question every Muslim that's out in public the way Shelby Cross is suggesting, because, that would just be racist.
Yeah, well, that doubt is exactly what al-Qaeda is counting on. So, Shelby, what can we do?
Well, if you see a Muslim, I say just walk straight up to them and under your breath just say, I'm on to you.
Oh.
Okay? I don't care if it's a man, a woman, or an adorable little brown baby jihadist in a stroller.
According to philosopher Isaiah Berlin, the true test of Winston Churchill was his willingness to give up authoritarianism once Britain was no longer under siege.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
فإذا انسلخ الأشهر الحرم فاقتلوا المشركين حيث وجدتموهم وخذوهم واحصروهم واقعدوا لهم كل مرصد فإن تابوا وأقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة فخلوا سبيلهم إن الله غفور رحيم.
I will not trade one dictatorship for another.
The time for half measures and talk is over, Senator.
And after your glorious coup, what then? You'll take your 5,000 warriors and leave?
I will leave. The soldiers will stay for your protection under the command of the Senate.
So? Once all of Rome is yours, you'll just give it back to the people.
Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, father of individualist Islamism, declared that since Muhammad's jihad of the sword was a defensive war against religious persecution, in a secular democracy with freedom of religion and worship, the jihad of the sword must be completely replaced by jihad of the pen, peaceful struggle to persuade. Because Muhammad died shortly after the conquest of Mecca, when the situation was still hostile, there is no way to know for sure whether he aimed to restore secular peace, as the Quran itself promised, or continue building Islam as a conquering state religion. That's really up to Muslims.
A new age is coming! Allah will be with every one of us! And it begins tonight! And we will take the city! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة. Oh, you who believe, enter into peace wholeheartedly.
There are actually a hell of a lot of Quran verses condemning religious compulsion, many of them general statements of principle, compared to the few and specific wartime commands in favor of forced conversion or censorship. That liberal Muslims are right.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
brings us to proof number 2 that liberal Muslims are right.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
Based on Quran 2:106, according to authoritarian Muslims, this verse means that whenever there is a contradiction between early and later verses, the later verse cancels out the early one. Which is convenient for them because the later verses are all the wartime ones. Islamic modernists like Sir Syed Ahmed Khan held that there is no such thing as simple abrogation. Rather, Muhammad's guidance as lawgiver and military commander naturally changed in response to circumstances, requiring Muslims to try to understand the original historical context in order to understand the intention behind it. If you carefully compare these two philosophies, the liberal Muslim versus the authoritarian Muslim, God's laws are eternal and unquestionable, political dissent is therefore blasphemy. It's just that God needed to change his eternal and unquestionable mind multiple times over the lifetime of a single prophet, but will never need to do so again in the thousands of years of cultural evolution that follow. You will clearly see that the authoritarian concept of abrogation is, objectively, more fucktarded.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
And now you see why Muslim dictators can't allow free speech.
ينكسر فيا في سكوتي موتي والغنى غيا وانا غني ليكي يا بلادي ازاي اذا شفت موتي لاجل اغنية ينكرني صوتي وينكسر فيا في سكوتي موتي والغنى غيا وانا غني ليكي يا بلادي ازاي اذا شفت موتي لاجل اغنية بكتبلك من قلبي زنزانتي العتيقة وظهري ساند عالجدار بشبه لجدي بسندته الأولى والسجن يشبه لمقاول الأنفار فورثت ذات السندة من سيدي وورثني برضه السجن من جيدي يا ورثني مين عن يوم قريب راح يورثك أو يوم بعيد وتروح لفين الشمس من فوق قفا الفلاح
What you're saying is that Israelis favor freedom of speech in the abstract as long as it's freedom of speech that doesn't upset anyone or doesn't criticize the government, and at the point it represents an unpopular point of view, that's where the problem is?
Yeah, I think it goes back to a grasp of the concept of democracy as if that's just about the rule of the majority. I want to live in a society where it is obvious for everyone, including the police, that putting up such posters, even if it's in bad taste, even if it's very offensive, not even, especially when it's very offensive and controversial, is absolutely okay. And no one should be concerned that if they do that, they may be arrested. Freedom of speech is not a matter of left or right. It's essential that it's protected for everyone. And indeed, the very cases where we need to intervene is not when people are saying stuff that is popular and embraced by everyone, because in that case, there will never be any issue. It's exactly the cases where it is unpopular and sometimes offensive and sometimes crude that you need to intervene and say, yeah, we do not wish to silence them, we want to argue with them.
But the Israelis are really trying to clamp down on expressions of support for Palestine because they can sense, at least I sense, that public opinion is turning against Israel on this matter.
Your Harry Potter co-star, Emma Watson, she recently shared a photo on her Instagram account, and it was from a pro-Palestinian rally, and it had the phrase, "Solidarity is a verb." Now, there was immediate backlash from some current and former Israeli officials. A former Israeli ambassador to the UN called Watson an anti-Semite. Now, how do you view Watson's post firstly, and then their reaction by some of these Israeli officials?
I think it was terrific and wonderful. And you can only expect the Israelis to respond in the way they did. They don't like any criticism of Israel. Indeed, any criticism of Israel is regarded as being anti-Semitic. The two things are conflated, unfortunately. That anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which it isn't. She didn't do anything wrong. She spoke from her heart. I applaud that.
ينكسر فيا في سكوتي موتي والغنى غيا وانا غني ليكي يا بلادي ازاي اذا شفت موتي لاجل اغنية ينكرني صوتي وينكسر فيا في سكوتي موتي والغنى غيا وانا غني ليكي يا بلادي ازاي اذا شفت موتي لاجل اغنية بكتبلك من قلبي زنزانتي العتيقة وظهري ساند عالجدار بشبه لجدي في سندته الأولى والسجن يشبه لمقاول الأنفار فورثت ذات السندة من سيدي وورثني برضه السجن من جيدي يا ورثني مين عن يوم قريب راح يورثك أو يوم بعيد وتروح لفين الشمس من فوق قفا الفلاح قربك خديوي الأمس لا ارتاح ولا بنرتاح السخرة هي المحبس وتاريخنا ملو جراح حكم النفوس عن نفس حكم النفوس سفاح ينكرني صوتي وينكسر فيا في سكوتي موتي والغنى غيا وانا غني ليكي يا بلادي ازاي اذا شفت موتي لاجل اغنيه.
Bringing us to the third Islamic proof that liberal Muslims are right. Eternal Islam.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
According to the Quran, God's message was revealed to all nations of the world through different messengers, with differences in religion willed by God because diversity is our strength.
The word revert, it refers to the idea that if you were to study the Quran, you would realise that you were a Muslim all your life and you didn't realise it.
It's just waiting to happen to you.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So I grew up, I'm 52, I grew up in a very different Ireland to the one that exists now, and it was a very oppressed country, religiously speaking. And everybody was miserable. Nobody was getting any joy in God. And whatever the church were teaching, and they weren't happy either, whatever they were telling you God said, I thought, well, it makes no sense because everybody's miserable. So I started reading the scriptures when I was a very young child. And then I started studying scriptures from different religions, trying to find, the truth about God as such. And I left Islam until last, and I never thought I would join a religion. I left Islam till last because I had so much prejudice about Islam,
Yes.
And then when I started reading, and I read just chapter 2 alone of the Quran, I realised, oh my God, I'm home. I've been a Muslim all my life and I didn't realise it.
Dublin, and where we're joined by the singer-songwriter Sinead O'Connor. Sinead, there you are in what once was a Catholic country, still possibly is. Yes, we're waving at you too. What do you make of events in Rome?
Well, I guess I wish everyone the very best, and I don't know anything about the man, so I'm not going to rush to judging him on one thing or another, but I would say he has a scientifically impossible task, because all religions, but certainly the Catholic Church is really a house built on sand, and it's drowning in a sea of conditional love, and therefore it can't survive. And actually the office of Pope itself is an anti-Christian office, and the idea that Christ needs a representative is laughable and blasphemous at the same time. Therefore it is a house built on sand, and we need to rescue God from religion, all religions. They've become a smokescreen which is actually distracting people from the fact that there is a Holy Spirit.
Moderate Muslims are not very moderate today. They exhibit all of the traits of orthodoxy, including dogma and fear. And what they're most afraid of is the fear of busting out of group identity. There's no question that the clerical class within Islam holds far too much power. And it was never meant to. Islam was always meant to be a faith that gives the believer direct access or a personal relationship with God. So I think that that is first and foremost, the change that needs to happen. But how can Islam, one may ask, be reinterpreted, not changed, but reinterpreted in order to allow for that personal relationship? Well, it's very simple. You see, we Muslims are not to worship God's self-appointed ambassadors. We are to worship God himself, which means that no Muslim can legitimately behave as if she or he has the monopoly on knowledge and truth.
And I realised, oh my God, I'm home. I've been a Muslim all my life and I didn't realise it. It's a way of thinking, Islam.
Yes.
You could almost be a Muslim without actually officially being a Muslim.
Yeah.
It's a headset. A Muslim is only a person who believes that nothing in the universe should be worshipped except God.
So you've embraced it in all its totality, I suppose you could say it. And
I mean, just to be whatever, but like in the same way that I would have embraced Christianity, there's things I like and things I don't like, and things I identify with and things I don't identify with. Do you know what I mean? But I really, really felt like, oh my God, I'm home.
Yeah.
And it does say in the scripture there that the reason why I liked it too is that the Quran, its reason for existing is to confirm all previous scripture.
The eternal teaching of this universal Islam is actually specified in the Quran. Believers have been commanded no more than this: to worship Allah sincerely, incline to truth, establish regular prayer, and give charity. Quran 4:135 further specifies the obligation of speaking truth to power, regardless of wealth, status, or personal attachment, while charity is defined in Surah 90 as a steep path of righteousness, to free slaves, give food in time of famine to the orphaned and needy, and urge each other to perseverance and compassion. The Quran teaches that followers should forgive those who trespass against them as they wish God to forgive their trespasses. In the Hadiths, this golden rule is made a general principle. None of you will have faith till he wishes for his brother what he likes for himself. Authoritarian Muslims claim this only applies to Muslim brothers, of course. God, those guys are dicks.
I think the major misconception I find among Western societies about Islam is identifying it too much with the Middle East of today. So there is little understanding of the historical depth and the richness of the Islamic tradition 1500 years globally.
Islam makes very large claims for itself. Very large claims indeed. It claims to be the last and final religion, the last and final revelation. When you see bumper stickers, everyone says you can't reduce major things to a bumper sticker. It's not my idea to have bumper stickers saying Islam is the solution. It's a well-known slogan actually of parties associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. They say Islam is the solution for everything. It takes care of all your life and the one to come. Sexuality, political economy, banking, diet, relations with other religions, everything. It's a total solution. What is creepy about the word total? I hope I don't have to tell an audience like this. It's the first 5 letters of the word totalitarian. It's absolute. It's absolute. It's all-inclusive. It's unanswerable. And oddly, for a religion that makes such large claims, notice another thing about Islam, it doesn't particularly like having these claims questioned or scrutinized. In other words, just as there is with all religions an inverse relationship between the claims they make and the evidence they can produce for them, you must have noticed that, with Islam, a younger religion, and perhaps therefore more in its first flush, there's an extraordinarily strong willingness to say that any challenge to its absolutist claims is by definition profane. And profanity and blasphemy can be the antecedent to very severe punishment, and often are, for Muslims and for non-Muslims. And this is not a road of peace, in my submission.
So now, we have two understandings of Sharia: God's law, the principles to voluntarily strive for, or a political doctrine very popular with authoritarian Muslims who want to rebrand political dissent as blasphemy.
And we went back home to Sudan. Then when I went back 2-3 years later, I was arrested with other group members of our group because we opposed the application of Sharia by the state, and because we opposed the continuation of the civil war in the south. So I spent about 18 months in prison.
Well, Sharia just means law. I mean, all people say Sharia law are making an elementary mistake.
Because we opposed the application of Sharia by the state.
Yes. What a shocker. Honestly, that man's whole shtick is just being objectively wrong in a snotty English voice. You'd be surprised how far that can get you. On the medieval Silk Road, a multicultural hub of trade, there was less incentive to use Islam as an excuse to conquer everyone. Bad for trade. And more incentive to interpret it as a secular, individualist and tolerant faith, leading to a new flourishing of Sufism, an individualist faith of independent religious conscience pioneered by a woman, Rabia of Basra of Iraq.
I think the liberal tradition is absolutely critical for the Islamic faith itself, because the freedom to believe and disbelieve are interconnected. They are two sides of the same coin. If I am not able to disbelieve, I cannot believe, and my belief has no value. So the ability to be Muslim by choice, by conviction, without coercion, is critical for the integrity of religious experience. So the liberal tradition for me is inherent to the possibility of being a good Muslim.
There's no rules as such. Do you know what I mean? I'm not. I would associate myself with the Sufi element of Islam.
Using the essential principles of eternal Islam, Sufis arrived at individualism, free love philosophy, secularism, and even gay pride in the Middle Ages. Clear proof that liberal Muslims are right.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
It was around this time that Peter Abelard, who with Eloise were the greatest feminist philosophers of 12th century Christian Europe, the one whose testicles were cut off for believing in free love, you remember, wrote Colationes, portraying Islam as the religion of rational skepticism and humanism compared to irrational and mad Christians and Jews. Just saying.
to misunderstandings after the fact. Sensitivity builds a prison in the final act. We lose direction, the stone unturned. Jealousy burns, cold, cold heart, hardened by you. Some things look better, baby, just passing through. And it's no sacrifice, just a simple word to hearts living in two separate worlds. And there's no sacrifice, no sacrifice, no sacrifice.
Which brings us to the fourth Islamic proof that liberal Muslims are right. Shura.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
The Islamic principle of Shura, set out in Quran 42:38, suggests that the ideal society is one where relations between individuals are determined by voluntary negotiated contract. Like a libertarian's wet dream, Muhammad's first successor, Abu Bakr, reportedly promoted these ethics of Shura and speaking truth to power in his inaugural address. Implies that Shura and speaking truth to power were a real living tradition for Muhammad's immediate successors, called the Khilafat-e-Rashida, the rightly guided caliphate. Still, the caliphate's embrace of military conquest its lack of institutional democracy or separation and balance of powers, and its ongoing dependence on slavery, ate away at these ethics of shura until they collapsed. But in the 19th century, Khayreddin Pasha, a Circassian sold into slavery after his father died fighting the Russians, rose to become the leading anti-corruption campaigner of the Ottoman Empire and Prime Minister of Tunisia, chairing the committee that produced the Arab world's first constitution with separation and balance of powers. In 1867, Khayreddin published The Surest Path to Knowledge regarding the condition of countries, claiming that European liberal democracies were the ideal system for realizing the classical Islamic principles of shura, consultation, and maslaha, public welfare. I went to the West and saw Islam, but no Muslims. I got back to the East and saw Muslims, but not Islam. Muhammad Abdu, 19th century Egyptian Islamic modernist. So, which is the true Islam? The authoritarian state that is required to enforce Sharia law, or the democratic state that is required to realize Islamic principles? Depends how you look at it, doesn't it?
حسيت لحظة بعد الثورة واللحظة اللي خرج فيها فيلم نجا الفني العيسيتين إن شاء الله. اللحظة ذيك أنا حسيت إنه تونس نجم تولي إيران. كشفت الاعتداءات اللي صارت على فيلم معناها يحكي على الملحجين في تونس. حسيت إنه فما خطر على تونس. ومن بعد أحداث العبدلية وحرق المقامات والاعتداء على المثقفين وعلى الصحفيين قلت سيبون معناها تونس هي تعمل حكاية تولي تونس إيران. وفي الصيف شهر جويلية شفت تصاور الفهمان في باريس. حسيت حكاية ديك معناها فيمينيزم جديد ينجم الفيمينيزم هذاك يوصل برشا حاجات بطريقة راديكال خاطر هما يستعملوا في طريقة راديكال معناها باش يوصلوا المساجات نتاعهم. نوليو حتى نحنا نستعملوا طريقة راديكال.
دقاش مسلمين ما تجيش القروية ما تجيش القروية ما يشرف ما يشرف على قبر بتاع ولا طرحان يا ولد هذا اللي يخبرنا كارثة دي الزوره من هنا دي تمشي تروح.
Je suis Bouhlid Belhadi, je suis venu de la Tunisie et je représente une association qui s'appelle Shams. C'est une association légalement reconnue et qui travaille ouvertement et publiquement sur les droits des LGBT. J'étais la première personne en Tunisie qui s'est affichée sur les médias tunisiens, c'était en mai 2015, pour parler de la situation de la communauté LGBTI en Tunisie. Ce sujet, c'est-à-dire l'homosexualité, est un sujet tabou au niveau culturel, religieux et social. Cette apparition a été le point de départ. Je commence à recevoir des appels de menaces. Ma famille m'a appelé pour m'informer qu'un groupe de salafistes à ma ville natale sont en train de me chercher pour appliquer la charia. C'est les règles de l'interprétation de l'islam.
Every day for your freedom of mind.
shura in original Islam included women. Muhammad's first wife, Khadija, mother of the believers and the most successful trader in Mecca, said to be around 15 years older than him, took a public role in Muhammad's prophetic mission and charitable works.
I guess I just wish they made movies like they used to make. You know, classics like The Karate Kid or Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude is my all-time favorite movie.
Their daughter Fatima publicly contested Abu Bakr's right to succeed Muhammad, as if she had a vote. Muhammad's wife Aisha even led an insurrection and commanded her own troops at the Battle of the Camel. So when Islamic modernists like Khairuddin claimed that liberal democracy was the best embodiment of historical shura, it didn't take Islamic feminists long to point out that votes and public roles for women would be the best modern embodiment of the role that women had in early Islam, back when shura still applied. The woman, given by the Creator the right to vote for the successor of the Prophet, is deprived of the right to vote for a deputy in a circuit or district election by a male being created by God. At the same time, this right is enjoyed by a man who might have less education and experience than the woman. Huda Sha'arwi, Egyptian feminist pioneer, 1944. However, that our nation from the outset needs only men to serve it? Women should also take their part, as women did in the early years of our nation and Islam. From their examples, we must learn that we must all contribute towards the development of our nation, and that this cannot be done without being equipped with knowledge. Soraya Tarzi. By the 1970s, when the sexy Rabia Balkhi movie was made, Meena Kishwar Kamal was pushing for total equality as founder of the Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan, RAWA. So what happened? Well, a decade of Soviet occupation left an estimated 1 million Afghan civilians dead, and the guerrilla resistance, organized around authoritarian Sharia law, brought the Taliban to power. Chechens and Palestinians were also pretty secular before the genocides and guerrilla resistance. For some reason, being under siege always makes Muslims turn to the siege commands of Muhammad. Go figure.
I don't think that Islam as such is more susceptible to fundamentalism than other religions. But I think the post-colonial condition of Muslim societies makes them more susceptible to fundamentalist thinking. So it is a reaction to colonialism and to perceptions of hegemony by the West, exploitation by other societies. So it is a defensiveness that makes people tend to become more conservative. As we know that if you feel under attack, you tend to protect your community, you tend to stick together, you tend to suppress dissent, you tend to highlight what is common against the shared common enemy. Those things which fundamentalism tend to emphasize are, to me, more of a product of the post-colonial experience of Muslims than it is of the religion itself as such. Because going back to the historical depth of Islam as a tradition, as a civilization, it has not been, most of its history, it has not been fundamentalist. So we see, in fact, certain moments of crisis when Muslim societies were under attack, and fundamentalism tend to feed and thrive on that sense of danger and besiegement.
Palestinian Sabrim Abu Daqqa weeps as she looks at a photo of her daughter who died during an Israeli airstrike on Gaza on Sunday.
Whose last moments you might want to take just a few seconds to imagine.
When you treat Christian extremists as the true face of their religion, that's a provocative pose for after-dinner speaking. But when you treat Muslim extremists as the true face of their religion, that's a talking point used to advocate mass shootings, ethnic cleansings, and dictatorships.
And this is not a road of peace, in my submission.
It's all looking a bit systemic, isn't it? Meanwhile, Sir Said Ahmed Khan, 19th century Indian Muslim champion of rational skepticism, was not a supporter of equal education for women. How do you think that worked out for him? married to one of the feminist sides. Finally, Sir Said Ahmed Khan's ideas of individual ijtihad inspired the lesbian Muslim feminism of Irshad Manji.
You see, we Muslims are not to worship God's self-appointed ambassadors. We are to worship God himself, which means that no Muslim can legitimately behave as if she or he has the monopoly on knowledge and truth.
That is always the sad fate of the anti-feminist rational skeptic, to accidentally systemically liberate women. Clear proof that liberal Muslims are right.
آزادی 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 آزادی.
Which is why, when democracy spread around the Muslim world, 16 women were elected head of state, including 2 in Ousmane Sonben's home country of Senegal.
Wassa! Wassa! Wassa!
The brilliant Yemeni feminist understood that to liberate women it was not enough just to point to empowered role models like Queen Arwa, sole ruler of Yemen in the 12th century. No.
So, with the dictator we will not be able to make this solution. The only thing that we can have with dictator, maybe pointing some women in this position or that as a decoy. But when you are really building a great democracy, you guarantee it in the legislation and also in the practice.
Tawakkul understood that women's liberation occurs as part of a systemic shift in the whole ethics of Yemeni society. So, as co-founder of Women Journalists Without Chains, Tawakkul led high-profile protests for press freedom.
They have to be with the people because those people, either I'm talking about expression rights, not just the rights of journalists, no, expression rights for the citizen. Now we are talking about الصحفي المواطن, the citizen journalist. We are talking about the journalists, we talk about the newspapers, the media, the TVs, everything now collapsed.
And used Islamic arguments to try to convert the Muslim Brotherhood to secular democracy.
The state must transform from being a tool of oppression to a home where every idea can be expressed, a future for removed from religious theocracy and fascism and toward a modern civil state.
While her peace activism introduced Gandhian ethics of freedom of conscience and right to dissent into Yemen.
Was the Mahatma Gandhi and Mandela give me the answer. Non-violent is the only way that you can face the violence inside the country and also the bad image about women inside the country and also all the violence from the government.
Then internal tribal rivalries, Iran, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates crashed in to crush the fledgling democracy.
حكمت المحكمة حضوريا بحبس المتهم أحمد سعد دومة سعد أبو دومة 6 أشهر مع الشغل وكفالة 5000 جنيه.
An Egyptian court has ordered a prominent activist to remain in custody pending trial on charges of participating in an illegal protest against the government's transfer of 2 strategic Red Sea islands to Saudi Arabia, a rights lawyer said on Saturday. Mahanur al-Masry, a rights lawyer herself and notable activist from the country's 2011 uprising, and another defendant attended Saturday's trial in the Mediterranean city of Alexandria. Al-Masry, 31, is a member of the Revolutionary Socialists movement. She is widely known for her activism in many labor movements, and on behalf of Syrian and Palestinian refugees in Egypt. All unauthorized demonstrations in Egypt are illegal under a law adopted in late 2013.
سجن فيه وردة على بابه فيه سجان كل السجون وحدة وده سجن بالألوان 4 حيطان من نور بتبارك العصيان ليه الطيور بتحج وتصاحب القضبان سجن فيه وردة على بابه فيه سجان كل السجون واحدة وده سجن بالألوان 4 حيطان من نور بتبارك العصيان ليه الطيور بتحج وتصاحب القضبان لن تحبسوا وردة يا دولة العميان يا وطن يا محتل يا شعب غلبوا النوم الليل عليكم هل والحكم فيه للبوم كل الرجال سلموا وسنة بطولها تقوم تكشف ضلال كتبكم وتحارب الفرعون
ما بننكسر حتخافوا من قلوبنا الإرادة مثل الحجر بكل وحدة منا زنوب يا حنفوت معكم الحروب يا عرفوا الوردة روحها ما بتنأثر أنا امرأة حرة كتاب ما بينقرا مرة حيط ما بينخرى أنا نور أنا ثور بعصري بطلة شعوب ما هي نور المصري تضحياتي لقضية إنسانية ما هي حقوق المرأة أحلام مخفية أفكار وهمية أضرار نفسية جدار حشرية هدت البشرية بس هي مش مخيفة تهديداتكم من ورا حياتكم كلمات بتقتل أمساكم زمن حبس فاتكم فاقت المرة وشافت ضررها فحاجة لا تحكم بلادكم
لن تحبسوا وردة يا دولة العميان يا وطن يا محتل يا شعب غلبوا النوم الليل عليكم هل والحكم فيه للبوم كل الرجال سلموا وسنة بطولها وتحارب الفرعون. يا دولة المتاعيس العارفة أفكاركم، المجد للمحابيس طول ما نفكركم. يا دولة المتاعيس العارفة أفكاركم، المجد للمحابيس طول ما نفكركم. واللي فعلتوا الظلم ما تقوملوش قومة، الثورة هي الحل واسألوا دوما. شعب غلبوا النوم اللي عليكم قل، والحكم فيه للهوم. كل الرجال سلموا وسنقبتوا الأرقوم، تكشف طبعا كتبكم وتحارب الفرعون.
It's been a long trek, but we've made it. The fifth and final proof that Muslim liberals are right and always were. Gradual abolition.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
Here's where Saeed Amir Ali comes in. Him again, last time I swear. Saeed, the humanitarian founder of the Red Crescent, expert Islamic scholar and historian, and one of 19th century India's sharpest legal minds and top jurists, was well aware of the legal framework for gradual abolition for deeply entrenched traditional evils, to declare them wrong in principle while progressively restricting them in practice. Ali demonstrated that the Quran's treatment of slavery fit the framework of gradual abolition. It is declared wrong in principle by the Quran's Surah 90, stating that it is the first virtue on the steep path of righteousness to free a slave, and it is restricted in practice by the Sahih Muslim Book of Hadiths. framing of the Quran's tolerance for slavery as a gradual abolition allowed Muslims around the world to accept the full abolition of slavery as a completion of the Quran's work and not a contradiction. But here's the interesting part. Once Amir Ali had established his logic for the popular cause of abolishing slavery, he then applied it to the less popular cause of liberating women. Being himself besties with groundbreaking British suffragette Millicent Fawcett, and with Eliza Lynn Linton, the mother of men's rights, because you could do that in those days. Specifically, Amir Ali argued for the abolition of polygamy by demonstrating it fit the same framework of gradual abolition. Got me to thinking, how many more of the abuses complained of in Islam actually show these hallmarks of gradual abolition? Let's do this. Child marriage is nowhere commanded in the Quran, considered to be the direct divine revelation. Instead, the hadiths, which record the life and sayings of the Prophet, claim he married Abu Bakr's daughter Aisha at the age of 7 to cement the alliance between the two. Now, because the Quran specifically states that Muhammad is a fallible human, with no knowledge of the future, there is no reason why he, even as a righteous and rightly guided man, shouldn't have participated in customs of his time that were not eternally ideal. This is Amir Ali's position.
In the Hadith, not the Quran, but in the sayings of the Prophet, which have the same theological and moral weight in the teaching.
But then you've got Islam Bukhari, sexy young Egyptian Islamic researcher, locked up for contempt of religion for saying fatwas are a bad idea. You know, like the Quran did. You can always tell a really devout Muslim by his jail sentence for contempt of religion. Islam Bukhari makes a detailed argument pointing out historical inconsistencies in the hadiths themselves, casting doubt on Aisha's child marriage. This is why many Islamic modernists treat the hadiths with great skepticism. Supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini, who married a 15-year-old, and who used the Prophet's example to justify child marriage in modern Iran. So there you have it. 3 devout Muslims, 3 separate approaches to the text, but only one who wants to rape 9-year-olds.
They're utterly consoled by the idea that heaven intervenes and cares about every action. Otherwise, they wouldn't put themselves to the trouble of raping, torturing, and murdering a 13-year-old.
Controversy usually concentrates on a petition that was published in France's foremost paper, Le Monde, in 1977. Which argued the rights of 12 and 13-year-olds to have relations with whomever they choose.
I said, and I still said, if we are under the ruling of dictators, any kind of right, if it's there, this right, it's fake rights. So, with the early marriage, we have a big debate with the government, with the religious people, with the society, a lot of demonstration again, and we couldn't do any kind of improvement. If there is one step, then the government make 10 steps back. But when we made the revolution against, the same thing you can measure it with the women's right, etc., etc. But when we step down the dictator Ali Saleh, and we enter to the transitional period, and when we enter to the national dialogue, and when we wrote the constitution, one of the most important articles that we put in the draft of constitution is preventing the early marriage. So can we do it like the preventing in the constitution, preventing it? More than that, putting the age of childhood as 18 years old. More than that, we guaranteed the women's right, the women participation in every institution, not less than 30%. And we wrote that, but all that collapsed when the counter-revolution came.
Get it? Next! Genital mutilation is another cultural practice advocated nowhere in the Quran.
Musomanuga bolokoli awajuwelente alkurane kono. Nere de tlo ya mera jola almami bada. Wasan silame muso chama de benyogo soro baka ka iji ke nyogon fe. Shia chama bula. Olu bema boloko de.
Astaghfirullah. Kole ado.
Even in the rather weak hadiths that can be found, Muhammad appears to be restricting the practice while affirming the woman's right to sexual pleasure in principle.
I give my attention to get sex, she gives her sex to get attention. That's how it should work. That's the fair trade. Women are a certain way. Yeah, it's annoying. But if you can identify it, and this is why your book's so great, if you can identify it and understand it, then what you need to do is position yourself in a way that you can use it against them, exploit them.
Oh God, stop. You're gonna do that thing where you open up a weird ass case of torture devices while inexplicably detailing your master plan and how I don't fit into it.
I'm building a better...
Seriously, you don't have to, really.
You're building a criminal empire because Daddy kicked you out of Janus Corp, and you think this is a big fuck you, but in actuality it's a very misguided attempt to win back his respect.
I get it. You're really not as complicated as you think.
Next! society that's constantly beating their wives already, this verse is actually restricting the practice, forbidding the beating of obedient wives, and stating that a wife should be verbally admonished and shunned first, before beating only as a last resort. Not the most inspiring step of social progress for women, but
If Mr. Reed has no further witnesses, then I have no choice but to rule in favor of... Your Honor!
That the submissive nature of women is one of those curious, biologically hardwired impulses that seems to take a hell of a lot of enforcement. I've always said that patriarchy is incompatible with libertarianism. The treatment of wife-beating in slavery, disapproval in theory, restriction in practice, is identical.
Your Honor, I object.
You would!
Bastard!
Hey! Quiet! Overruled!
You don't really think you'll win, do you? Things change.
Meow.
It's a total solution, What is creepy about the word total? Hope I don't have to tell an audience like this. It's the first 5 letters of the word totalitarian. It's absolute. It's absolute. It's all-inclusive. It's unanswerable. And oddly, for a religion that makes such large claims, notice another thing about Islam, it doesn't particularly like having these claims questioned.
There's no rape culture garbage. It's not taught. It's not thought of. No one really does it. A girl wouldn't stay around your house unless she wants to have sex with you because she understands that why the f would she stay around your house otherwise?
Next! Wife as property. Come to your place of cultivation however you wish. Not really consenting. Then again, marital rape was only made a crime nationwide in America in 1993. I was born before then. So it can certainly be argued that the direction of Muhammad's reforms is towards women's consent. Not only that, but the core ethics of Islam, shura, voluntary contract, and the golden rule, which explicitly applies to women, can only be realized sexually as consent culture. More than that, the Hadith Sahih al-Bukhari 5083 explicitly quotes Muhammad stating, "Any man who has a slave girl whom he educates properly, teaches good manners, frees and marries her, will get a double reward." So, if it's ideal to educate, free and marry your slave girl, how could it be ideal to have a slave girl?
Ponies run, the girls are young, the odds are there to beat. You win a while, and then it's done, your little winning streak. And summer to deal with your invincible defeat. You live your life as if it's real. 1,000 kisses deep. I'm turning tricks. I'm getting fixed. I'm back on Boogie Street. You lose your grip, and then you slip into the masterpiece. And maybe I had miles to drive and promises to keep. You ditch it all to stay alive. 1,000 kisses deep. And sometimes when the night is slow, the wretched and the meek, we gather up our hearts and go. 1,000 kisses deep, confined to sex, we pressed against the limits of the sea. I saw there were no oceans left for scavengers like me. I made it to the forward deck. I blessed our remnant fleet, and then consented to be wrecked. 1,000 kisses deep. I'm turning tricks. I'm getting fixed. I'm back on Boogie Street. I guess they won't exchange the gifts that you were meant to keep. And quiet is the thought of you, the file on you complete, except what we forgot to do. 1,000 kisses deep. And sometimes when the night is slow, the wretched and the meek, we gather up our hearts and go. 1,000 kisses deep.
مسلمين ما تجيش القروية ما تجيش ما يصرف
Sit down.
Which brings us to gay pride. There are three main theological arguments in Islam for gay pride. First, Quran 42:49-50 states that Allah intentionally creates what He wills in the birth of children. So, when twin studies repeatedly indicate that there is an inborn component to homosexuality, that would, according to Islamic theology, mean that predisposition to homosexuality must be willed by Allah. An argument used by both Irshad Manji and Mr. January on the Red Hot Muslim Feminist calendar himself, Amir Khan.
Welcome back. तो आप लोगों को सोचने का मौका मिल गया होगा. बताइए आप लोगों को क्या लगता है अगर आपका बच्चा या बच्ची आपसे आकर ऐसी बात कहे कि मैं गे हूँ, लेस्बियन हूँ, होमोसेक्सुअल हूँ, ट्रांसजेंडर हूँ या बाइसेक्सुअल हूँ, तो आप लोगों का क्या रिएक्शन होगा? आप में से कितने ऐसे हैं जो इस बात को आसानी से एक्सेप्ट कर लेंगे, मतलब कोई प्रॉब्लम बिल्कुल ही नहीं होगा? हाथ ऊपर करके बताइए. वाह, करीब आधे हैं. और आप में से कितने हैं जिनको थोड़ा ये डिस्टर्बिंग लगेगा, मुश्किल होगा, थोड़ा अपसेट हो जाएंगे? अच्छा, आप लोग एकदम खुल के बोलिए, कोई टेंशन मत रखिए, जो आपके मन में सच बात आपको बोलना चाहिए. हाँ हाँ.
ऐसा अगर मेरा बच्चा आके मुझे एकदम से कहेगा तो मुझे एकदम से झटका लगेगा.
तो उस वक्त आप क्या करेंगे? उसको डांटेंगे?
नहीं डांटेंगे नहीं. आई ट्राई टू वर्क आउट अ सॉल्यूशन विद हिम.
सोल्यूशन क्या हो सकता है, आपको क्या लगता है?
अगर वो गे रह गए तो मैं उसको काउंसिल करेगा कि वेदर ही कैन ऑप्ट आउट ऑफ इट.
अगर उसका मन बदल सकता है क्या?
हाँ, यस.
और कोई? हाँ हाँ, आप बताइए.
सच्ची में ऐसा अगर इंसिडेंस हो जाता है तो अगर कम्युनिटी में देखे, सब जगह पे देखे, तो एक्सेप्टेंस इजीली हो नहीं सकता ये चीज का. ये मैं 100% मेरे साइड से बोलता हूँ.
जी जी. हाँ हाँ मैडम, आप कुछ बोल रहे हैं?
मेरी बेटियाँ ये कल जाके मुझे कहेगी कि मम्मी मुझे लड़का नहीं लड़की पसंद है, तो पैर की जमीन फिसल जाएगी. अरे ये क्या बोल रही है, उसको लड़का पसंद आना चाहिए तो लड़की पसंद आ रही है बोल रही है. तो ये इतना मुमकिन नहीं है.
आई एम श्योर कि आप बहुत सारे पेरेंट्स यहाँ पर हैं, आप सबके मन में बहुत सारे सवाल भी होंगे. तो हमारे साथ इस वक्त डॉक्टर अंजलि मौजूद हैं. डॉक्टर अंजलि छाबरिया, प्लीज ज्वाइन मी. डॉक्टर अंजलि एक साइकियाट्रिस्ट हैं. डॉक्टर अंजलि, हमें बताइए कि क्या होमोसेक्सुअल होना या गे या लेस्बियन होना या बाइसेक्सुअल या ट्रांसजेंडर होना, क्या ये कोई बीमारी है, कोई डिजीज है?
बिल्कुल नहीं, ये बिल्कुल बीमारी नहीं है, ये कुदरती है. तो
पैदाइशी ये है?
बिल्कुल. और इसमें कोई किसी की गलती नहीं है कि बच्चा ऐसा है.
बच्चे की गलती नहीं है, ना माँ बाप की गलती है.
बिल्कुल ना.
ऐसा नहीं है कि माँ बाप ने कुछ गलती की है, उसको परवरिश में कोई गलती हुई है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है.
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है.
फिर भी बहुत सारे माँ बाप को लगता है कि ये एक बीमारी है और वो फिर बच्चे को डॉक्टर के पास ले जाते हैं ताकि उसका इलाज हो. तो उसके लिए आपको क्या कहना है?
देखिए, अगर मैं आपको कहती हूँ कि आज से अब लड़कियों की तरफ मत देखिए और लड़कों की तरफ सेक्सुअली देखिए, क्या आप कर सकेंगे?
नहीं, मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगा.
तो अगर आप नहीं कर पाएंगे तो फिर हम कैसे सोच सकते हैं कि वो लड़का या वो लड़की कर पाएगी?
जी.
तो जैसे हेट्रोसेक्सुअल होमोसेक्सुअल नहीं बन सकता, वैसे होमोसेक्सुअल हेट्रोसेक्सुअल नहीं बन सकता.
तो मेडिकली इसको बदलना मुमकिन नहीं है.
जी जी.
तो फिर भी कुछ डॉक्टर्स शॉक्स भी देते थे बच्चों को.
देखिए, जो ये डॉक्टर्स ऐसे कर रहे हैं वो बिल्कुल गलत कर रहे हैं. इसमें कोई सच्चाई नहीं है और ऐसी ट्रीटमेंट्स होनी ही नहीं चाहिए क्योंकि ये बीमारी ही नहीं है.
तो आप शॉक दें, कुछ भी दें, आप मुझे बदल नहीं सकते. योगा से ये चीज बदल सकते हैं हम लोग?
बिल्कुल नहीं.
Second argument. All prohibitions of homosexuality in Islam are drawn from the sin of Sodom, which always presents the taboo on sex with men as a necessary rape prevention measure in a society with no concept of sexual consent. A sexual consent culture, as Shura and the Golden Rule suggest you should, the sin of Sodom would no longer make sense because, as Rumi would argue, there would no longer be sexual hierarchy.
The man said, "Don't be afraid, my beautiful boy. If you want, you can also be on the top. If you are afraid of me, you should know that I am a bottom. So sit on me and ride me as if I was a camel."
Conventional opinion is the ruin of souls. By John, it's my throes I can't control. Rumi was a genius. Whoa. Siraj, you're an ass. Whoa. Rumi could fuck shum. Whoa. Wahaj has to whack.
Third argument. Hadiths showing Muhammad's acceptance or tolerance of eunuchs as an identity for men who feel persistently incapable of marriage to exempt them from manhood and its taboos would, in a sexual consent culture, logically develop into gay pride. As Faris Malik has argued, the gay Westerner who converted to Islam. To conclude, there is not one single abuse that Islam has been accused of that does not fit exactly the pattern of gradual abolition already established and accepted across the Muslim world by the abolition of slavery. Clear proof that liberal Muslims are right.
Azadi, 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 Azadi.
Jordan, face back. Swoosh! And that's the game! Nothing further, Your Honor.
Now you see why ISIS and Boko Haram are trying to bring slavery back. Give it up, losers!